Mr. President.
The senator from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. President. In 1831, a young Frenchman seeking to understand the motivating principles behind the world's newest independent nation mused that, and I quote, "In America, the principle of sovereignty is not either barren or concealed, as it is with some other nations. It is recognized by the customs and proclaimed by the laws. It spreads freely and arrives without impediment at its most remote consequences." Now, Alexis de Tocqueville had come to America on a research mission. He had no special training in government or political science, but he was fueled by a desire to know if the principles that guided the early American Republic could help his fellow Frenchmen. Even as an outsider, de Tocqueville saw freedom, not a lone figurehead or compulsory philosophy, as the foundation to build upon. Freedom is what he saw as an enduring foundation. Today, however, the belief in a moral right to self-governance is more often than not portrayed as quaint, and the kind of fierce independence that drove our founders to the battlefield outdated in comparison to modern concepts of so-called global governance and polite codependence. But when I look at the state of the world and all its competing philosophies, I am grateful, very grateful, for our bold commitment to self-defense. That is why I come to the floor today to express my thoughts on our National Defense Authorization Act and to say a thank you to Chairman Inhofe for his leadership in pushing the Senate Armed Services Committee to present ideas, to bring forward amendments, and to work through this process together. I am looking forward to the couple of days in front of us with members from both sides of the aisle in this chamber. Cannot be understated. The importance of maintaining a regular budget for our military cannot be diminished. Failure to do so will put our troops at a disadvantage. Look no further than the ongoing tension right now between the U.S. and Iran, how this has magnified the part that deterrence plays in defending our security without resorting to the use of military force. The importance of deterrence. Last week, I spoke at length with two emerging warfighting domains that challenge the way we think about modern defense. These are cyber and space. That's why this year's NDAA expands beyond legacy programs to include recognition of emerging threats and our response to those. The next great threat to our sovereignty may be more subtle than a bomb dropped on American soil. It could undermine our cyber security or slowly compromise the supply chain that provides us with needed microelectronics. It might cause us to question our position in the world or to rethink our influence in the international community. It's important to understand that these attacks aren't only meant to undermine our relationships and our infrastructure, they're a coordinated and intentional attack on the foundations that de Tocqueville recognized as both powerful, unique, and underpinning what we have in the United States. The implications are clear. Everything we do in this chamber must be understood in the context of defending America's sovereignty. It means believing in the supremacy of the Constitution and giving the defense community the means to protect us, to fulfill that first responsibility, providing for the common defense. It means recognizing that freedom of speech and freedom of the press and free assembly are just as precious as any physical thing that we can put under lock and key. Those who would threaten our freedom and safety do not look to America and see our formidable military as the single greatest threat to their destructive agenda. They are most frightened by our unwavering and ardent commitment to freedom. Our enemies are frightened of the young men and women who willingly join the military. They volunteer for service. They are frightened by the strength of conviction that leads men and women on the street, men and women on our streets, to protect protesters and their protest, even though they would never join those protests, not in a million years. They do this because they recognize that defending someone's right to speak is just as important as speaking themselves. Our enemies are frightened by the confidence with which we defend the Constitution when well-meaning actors ask if we could set the First Amendment aside to better protect impressionable minds from dangerous ideas. Ours is the kind of freedom that is always in danger of extinction, just as the late President Reagan repeatedly reminded us. But it's also worth protecting, and this week I implore my friends on each side of the aisle to do all they can to ensure that our best, our first line of defense, has the ability to protect and defend freedom and freedom's cause. I yield the floor.